Here are the steps for removal of your mPulse V7 power box for return and/or reprogramming. Wiring connections are labeled with stickers of shapes and colors to help you identify them. In the instructions, the shape will be named with its corresponding color. Red shapes are power feeds. Blue shapes are sensor or NTC feeds. Green shapes are near-infrared (NIR) feeds. Each wall is assigned a different shape. Walls are labeled from orientation when facing the back wall inside the sauna. In the instructions, the power line, triangle, sensor line, triangle, and NIR, triangle, will be highlighted with their corresponding color. Unplug the unit from the power source or flip the breaker for the dedicated circuit to the sauna. To better access the power box area within the sauna, remove the bench. What follows can be done without removing the bench, but it is more efficient and comfortable to do so with the added space. To remove the bench, unmount the heater frames from the surrounding walls. The bench will lift straight up from the bench supports mounted to the walls. For Discover and Empower cabins, you only need to remove the back wall bench sections. Unscrew the power box covers located on the base along the back wall of the sauna. These are the very rear portions of the floor. The screws will be located in the grooves between the floorboards. You will see the sections of the power box covers with a bisecting cut perpendicular to the wood slats. Remove all screws for all sections of the power box covers. Once exposed, remove 3 of the Phillips screws anchoring the box to the ground. 2 on the long front edge and 1 on the right edge close to the back wall, as you are facing the back wall. Disconnect the power cord on the left edge of the power box. The power cord is also anchored by a Phillips screw to the wood inside the base in the section to the immediate left of the power box. We are now ready to begin disconnecting the power box from the wiring from the walls. Start with the left wall connections. Disconnect the power feed G1 triangle. The connector has a lever on one side that you depress to pull the connector apart. Disconnect the L sensor connector, triangle. Disconnect the NIR connector, triangle. Disconnect the USB-C connector towards the rear of the box, underneath the attached antenna. There will be a spare 2-pin solid connector on this side that will be used on the new box as well. Now move around to the long front edge of the power box, starting with the wire port on the left, if facing the back wall. Disconnect the black AC plug power connector for the floor heater. Disconnect the G52FL sensor 4-pin line, red and white wires with solid white connector, from F11. Move along the front edge to the right front port of wires on the long front edge. Disconnect the 4-pin flat G17 connector, red and white/black/blue wires, from the F18 corresponding connection. Disconnect the G4 hexagon power connector from the F7 power cable, hexagon. Disconnect the G52FR sensor line, hexagon, from the corresponding F8 connector, hexagon. Disconnect the F50FR sensor from the corresponding F21 connector. Finally, there will be a connector that may be covered with black tape, red and white wires, and zip tied with a screw anchoring it to the base. Unscrew the anchored zip tie to disconnect. This connection, G30, will be used on your new power box. Turn the corner to the first port of wires on the right edge of the power box, and note that these wires pass through the wood support to the section to the immediate right of the power box in the floor. There will be a zip tie holding a bundle of wires between the two black boxes. Cut this zip tie. There may be another zip tie in this section to the right that may need to be snipped to allow for a better view or angle on the connectors. In this section, disconnect the G3 pentagon power connector from the corresponding F9 or F10 connector pentagon. Disconnect the sensor connector pentagon labeled G51R from the corresponding connector F10 or F11 pentagon. Now disconnect the G32 NIR connector semi-transparent connection pentagon from the F12 connector pentagon. There will be a spare 2-pin solid connector on this side that will be used on the new box as well. In this same section, front side right port. Disconnect the 3-pin G41 connector circle from the F16 harness. Disconnect the G42 2-pin connectors circle from the paired transformer connectors black box located closer to the back wall. There should be a second transformer to the right of the power box that will continue to be plugged in through this process. Do not unplug the second transformer. Move back to the right edge of the power box and disconnect the G2 power square cable from the G44 circle connector coming from the small metal box with aluminum covering. Disconnect the sensor cable G50 square from the B5 sensor connector square from the back wall. Disconnect the G31 NIR square connector from the B6 square connector coming from the back wall. There will be a spare 2-pin solid connector on this side that will be used on the new box as well. All connections will now be disconnected for removal of the power box. To install a replacement power box, please follow the same steps, making the connections previously described. Thank you for choosing Sunlighten.